What if the key to solving climate change isn't just in science, but in philosophy? In this thought-provoking video, we explore how philosophical frameworks like ethics, responsibility, and intergenerational justice shape how we understand and act on the climate crisis. From utilitarianism's cost-benefit analysis to deep ecology's respect for all life, we dive into how philosophical thinking offers powerful tools to approach global environmental challenges. Explore the intersection of philosophy and climate change. Discover how ethical environmental responsibility can address global issues. The relationship between philosophy and climate change is becoming increasingly important as the world grapples with the challenges posed by global warming. Philosophical inquiry offers a unique lens through which to examine the ethical environmental responsibility that underlies our actions and decisions regarding the planet. By exploring the intersection of philosophy and climate change, we can gain a deeper understanding of the moral and ethical dimensions of this global issue. This understanding is crucial for developing effective strategies to mitigate the effects of climate change and promote sustainability. Key takeaways: philosophy plays a crucial role in understanding climate change. Ethical considerations are key to addressing environmental challenges. Climate ethics informs our responsibility towards the planet. Philosophical inquiry can guide sustainable practices. Understanding the moral dimensions of climate change is essential. The philosophical foundations of environmental ethics as the world grapples with climate change and ecological degradation. The philosophical foundations of environmental ethics become increasingly relevant. Environmental ethics, a branch of philosophy, seeks to understand the moral relationship between humans and the natural world. Historical development of environmental philosophy from ancient wisdom to modern environmental thought. The roots of environmental philosophy can be traced back to ancient civilizations, where nature was often revered and considered sacred. Indigenous cultures around the world had a profound respect for the land and its inhabitants, which influenced their ethical practices. In modern times, this ancient wisdom has evolved into a distinct field of study that incorporates various philosophical perspectives. Key philosophical figures in environmental ethics. Several key figures have shaped the discourse in environmental ethics. Henry David Thoreau and Aldo Leopold are notable for their contributions to the field. Thoreau's advocacy for simple living and Leopold's land ethic have been particularly influential. Their work has inspired generations of environmental philosophers and activists. Core ethical principles in environmental philosophy. At its core, environmental philosophy is guided by several ethical principles. Anthropocentrism, biocentrism, and ecocentrism represent different perspectives on the moral value of humans, other living beings, and ecosystems. These principles inform debates on issues like conservation, sustainability, and justice. Ethical principle description implications. Anthropocentrism, human-centered approach, prioritizes human needs and interests. Biocentrism, life-centered approach, attributes moral value to all living beings. Ecocentrism, ecosystem-centered approach, considers the well-being of ecosystems as a whole, and wildness is the preservation of the world. Henry David Thoreau. Philosophy and climate change, ethical environmental responsibility as a global issue. As the world grapples with the escalating crisis of climate change, philosophical inquiry into its ethical dimensions becomes increasingly crucial. The need for a comprehensive understanding of our moral obligations towards the environment and future generations has never been more pressing. The moral imperative of climate action. The moral imperative for climate action is rooted in the understanding that our actions have significant consequences for the planet and its inhabitants. Climate change is not just an environmental issue but a moral and ethical one, requiring immediate attention and collective action. The moral imperative is driven by the need to protect vulnerable populations and preserve the planet for future generations. Intergenerational ethics and future responsibilities. Intergenerational ethics plays a critical role in understanding our responsibilities towards future generations. It involves considering the long-term consequences of our actions and ensuring that we do not compromise the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. The non-identity problem and future generations. The non-identity problem poses a significant challenge to intergenerational ethics. It questions whether we can harm future individuals by causing them to exist in a world affected by climate change, given that without our actions, they might not have existed at all. This problem highlights the complexity of attributing harm to future generations. Discounting the future. Philosophical perspectives. Discounting the future refers to the practice of valuing present benefits over future costs. From a philosophical perspective, this raises ethical concerns about our responsibility to future generations. Different philosophical theories offer varying perspectives on how to balance present and future interests, emphasizing the need for a careful consideration of our moral obligations. Ethical principle description. Implication for climate change. Moral imperative. The duty to act based on moral principles. Immediate action to mitigate climate change. Intergenerational justice. Fairness between current and future generations. Long-term thinking in climate policies. Non-identity problem. The challenge of attributing Harm to future individuals' complexity in assigning responsibility for climate impacts. Anthropocentrism versus ecocentrism. Competing worldviews. The debate between anthropocentrism and ecocentrism represents a fundamental divide in how we approach environmental ethics. Anthropocentrism posits that human beings are the central or most important entities in the world, while ecocentrism argues that all living organisms and ecosystems have intrinsic value. Human-centered approaches to environmental ethics. Anthropocentric views often lead to a utilitarian approach to nature, where the value of the environment is measured by its utility to humans. This perspective is criticized for potentially justifying environmental degradation, as it prioritizes human interests over the well-being of other species and ecosystems. As Arne Næss, a Norwegian philosopher, once said, the well-being of the human species is intertwined with the well-being of the planet. However, proponents argue that anthropocentrism can also lead to environmental stewardship, as humans have a vested interest in maintaining a healthy planet for their own survival. This perspective emphasizes the need for sustainable practices and responsible management of natural resources. Nature-centered philosophical perspectives. Ecocentrism, on the other hand, advocates for a more holistic approach, recognizing the intrinsic value of all living beings and ecosystems. This worldview encourages a deeper respect for nature and promotes ecological conservation. Ecocentric ethics challenges the anthropocentric view by arguing that humans are not separate from nature but are part of a larger ecological community, and every walk with nature, one receives far more than he seeks. John Muir. Deep ecology and its implications for climate policy. Deep ecology, a subset of ecocentrism, calls for a radical rethinking of human relationships with nature. It advocates for a shift from anthropocentric to ecocentric values, emphasizing the need for humans to live in harmony with the natural world. This philosophy has significant implications for climate policy, suggesting that environmental decisions should be guided by the principle of ecological sustainability rather than solely by human interests. By embracing ecocentric perspectives, climate policies can be designed to protect biodiversity, preserve ecosystems, and ensure a sustainable future for all life on Earth. Justice dimensions of climate change. The justice dimensions of climate change are multifaceted, involving both distributive and procedural aspects. Climate change disproportionately affects vulnerable populations, raising concerns about fairness and equity in the distribution of climate burdens and benefits. Distributive justice and climate burdens. Distributive justice in the context of climate change focuses on how the benefits and burdens of climate change are allocated among different populations. Historically, those who have contributed least to greenhouse gas emissions often suffer the most from the impacts of climate change, such as rising sea levels, droughts, and extreme weather events. Key issues in distributive justice include unequal distribution of climate change impacts, disproportionate effects on vulnerable populations, historical responsibilities for greenhouse gas emissions, procedural justice in climate decision-making. Procedural justice refers to the fairness and transparency of processes involved in climate decision-making. It emphasizes the need for inclusive, participatory approaches that give a voice to all stakeholders, particularly those most affected by climate change. Principles of procedural justice. Description: inclusivity, involvement of diverse stakeholders in decision-making processes, transparency, clear and accessible information about climate policies and decisions, accountability mechanisms to hold decision-makers accountable for their actions. Climate justice movements and their philosophical foundations. Climate justice movements draw on various philosophical foundations, including theories of distributive justice, human rights, and environmental ethics. These movements advocate for equitable climate policies and highlight the moral imperative of addressing climate change. Philosophical approaches to climate uncertainty and risk. As climate change continues to manifest, philosophical approaches to understanding and mitigating its uncertainties become increasingly crucial. The complexity of climate change introduces various uncertainties that challenge our ability to predict and mitigate its impacts. Philosophical inquiry is essential in navigating these uncertainties, particularly in applying ethical principles to decision-making processes. The precautionary principle in environmental philosophy. The precautionary principle suggests that when there is a risk of significant harm, we should take preventive measures even if the science is not yet definitive. This principle is particularly relevant in the context of climate change, where the potential consequences of inaction are severe. Key aspects of the precautionary principle include taking preventive action in the face of uncertainty, shifting the burden of proof to proponents of an activity, exploring a wide range of alternatives to possibly harmful actions, increasing public participation in decision-making processes. Epistemological challenges in climate science. Climate science faces several epistemological challenges, including the limitations of climate models, the complexity of natural systems, and the uncertainties associated with predicting future conditions. Challenge description implication model limitations. Climate models simplify complex systems and may not capture all variables. Uncertainty in predictions. Complexity of natural systems. Natural systems are inherently complex and dynamic. Difficulty in accurate forecasting. Uncertainty in future conditions. Future greenhouse gas emissions and other factors are uncertain. Challenges in planning and mitigation. Knowledge, doubt, and action in climate ethics. In the face of uncertainty, climate ethics must balance the need for action with the limitations of our knowledge. This requires a nuanced approach that considers both the potential risks and the ethical implications of our decisions. Philosophy of technology and climate solutions. As climate change intensifies, the role of technology in mitigation strategies becomes a focal point for philosophical debate. The philosophy of technology offers a critical lens through which we can evaluate the potential and limitations of various climate solutions. Technological optimism versus skepticism. The debate between technological optimism and skepticism is central to understanding the role of technology in addressing climate change. Technological optimists argue that advancements in technology will provide the necessary solutions to mitigate climate change, citing examples such as renewable energy technologies and carbon capture. On the other hand, technological skeptics caution that relying solely on technological fixes may distract from the need for systemic change in how societies consume and produce energy. Ethical dimensions of geoengineering. Geoengineering, or the deliberate modification of the Earth's climate system, raises significant ethical concerns. As noted by philosopher Clive Hamilton, geoengineering is a Faustian bargain. It offers a quick fix but at a potentially catastrophic cost to the planet's ecological integrity. The ethical dimensions of geoengineering involve questions about governance, justice, and the potential for unintended consequences. The moral hazards of technological climate fixes. The reliance on technological solutions to climate change can create moral hazards, where the perceived availability of a technological fix reduces the incentive to change behaviors or policies that contribute to climate change. It is crucial to consider these moral hazards when evaluating the role of technology in climate mitigation strategies. Political philosophy and climate governance. The intersection of political philosophy and climate governance offers a nuanced understanding of our global response to environmental challenges. As we navigate the complexities of climate change, it's crucial to examine the philosophical underpinnings that shape our governance structures and policies. Democratic approaches to climate policy. Democratic approaches to climate policy emphasize the importance of inclusive decision-making processes and the protection of individual rights. This involves deliberative democracy, where citizens play an active role in shaping environmental policies. Deliberative democracy and environmental decision-making. Deliberative democracy fosters a more participatory and transparent approach to environmental governance. By engaging citizens in the decision-making process, it ensures that climate policies reflect the values and priorities of the broader community. Global justice and international climate agreements. The issue of climate change also raises questions of global justice, particularly in the context of international climate agreements. These agreements must balance the needs and responsibilities of different countries, ensuring that the burden of climate action is distributed fairly. Effective climate governance requires a commitment to both democratic principles and global justice. By integrating these elements, we can develop more equitable and sustainable solutions to the climate crisis. Existential perspectives on climate crisis. The existential threat posed by the climate crisis demands a profound reevaluation of our values and actions. As we grapple with the reality of climate change, existential perspectives offer a unique framework for understanding the depth of this crisis and our response to it. Climate anxiety and philosophical responses. Climate anxiety is becoming increasingly prevalent as individuals confront the potential catastrophic consequences of climate change. Philosophical responses to this anxiety vary, with some advocating for stoic acceptance of the inevitable, while others promote a more activist approach, encouraging individuals to take action to mitigate the effects of climate change. Key philosophical responses include existential acceptance, acknowledging the reality of climate change and accepting the uncertainty it brings. Activism, encouraging individuals to take action to reduce their carbon footprint and advocate for climate policies. Resilience building, fostering psychological resilience to cope with the stress and anxiety associated with climate change. Finding meaning and purpose in climate action. Finding meaning and purpose in climate action can be a powerful antidote to climate anxiety. By engaging in climate activism, reducing personal carbon footprints, or supporting climate-resilient infrastructure, individuals can regain a sense of control and purpose. Philosophical resources for climate resilience. Several philosophical resources can enhance climate resilience, including existentialism, which emphasizes individual freedom and choice, and stoicism, which promotes resilience in the face of adversity. These philosophies can help individuals navigate the emotional challenges posed by climate change. Indigenous philosophy and traditional ecological knowledge. As the world grapples with climate change, indigenous philosophy and traditional ecological knowledge are increasingly recognized for their potential to inform effective environmental strategies. Indigenous communities have long possessed a profound understanding of the natural world, shaped by their philosophical perspectives and traditional knowledge. Non-Western philosophical approaches to nature. Indigenous philosophy encompasses a range of non-Western approaches to understanding nature, often emphasizing a reciprocal relationship between humans and the environment. These perspectives contrast with Western views that frequently prioritize human dominance over nature. Integrating indigenous wisdom with contemporary climate science. The integration of indigenous wisdom with contemporary climate science offers a more comprehensive understanding of environmental issues. This synthesis can lead to innovative solutions that respect both traditional knowledge and scientific rigor. Case studies of indigenous climate solutions. Examples of successful indigenous climate solutions include reforestation efforts by indigenous communities in the Amazon and sustainable land management practices among Native American tribes. These initiatives demonstrate the effectiveness of combining traditional ecological knowledge with modern climate science, practical applications, philosophy in climate activism and policy. As the world grapples with the challenges of climate change, philosophical perspectives are increasingly informing climate activism and policy development. This integration of philosophy into practical applications is crucial for developing effective and ethical climate solutions. Philosophical foundations of environmental movements. Environmental movements have long been influenced by philosophical ideas about the value of nature, human responsibility, and justice. The philosophical foundations of these movements provide a moral and ethical framework for understanding the climate crisis and guiding action. Principles of environmental justice. Ethical considerations for intergenerational responsibility. Debates between anthropocentrism and ecocentrism. Applying ethical frameworks to climate decision-making. Ethical frameworks derived from philosophical inquiry are essential for evaluating climate policies and decisions. These frameworks help policymakers and activists assess the moral implications of different courses of action. Key ethical considerations include distributive justice and the allocation of climate burdens. The precautionary principle. In the face of uncertainty, the rights and responsibilities of different nations and generations. Bridging theory and practice. Philosophers and climate advocacy. Philosophers play a vital role in translating theoretical ethical frameworks into practical advocacy. By engaging with policymakers, activists, and the public, philosophers can help ensure that climate actions are guided by well-reasoned ethical principles. Conclusion. The continuing dialogue between philosophy and climate action. The intersection of philosophy and climate change offers a rich terrain for exploring the ethical, moral, and existential dimensions of the global climate crisis. Throughout this article, we have examined various philosophical perspectives that shed light on the complexities of climate change, from environmental ethics to the role of technology in climate solutions. The continuing dialogue between philosophy and climate action underscores the need for a multifaceted approach to addressing this global issue. By engaging with philosophical inquiry, we can deepen our understanding of the moral imperative of climate action and the responsibilities that come with it. As we move forward, the integration of philosophical thought into climate discourse can inform more effective and equitable climate policies, fostering a more sustainable future. The ongoing conversation between philosophy and climate action is crucial for developing a comprehensive response to the challenges posed by climate change. FAQ. What is the role of philosophy in understanding climate change? Philosophy plays a crucial role in understanding climate change by providing ethical frameworks, moral principles, and critical thinking to address the complexities of this global issue. How does environmental ethics relate to climate change? Environmental ethics provides a moral foundation for understanding our responsibilities towards the environment and future generations, and forming climate change mitigation and adaptation strategies. What is the difference between anthropocentrism and ecocentrism? Anthropocentrism prioritizes human interests and values, whereas ecocentrism emphasizes the intrinsic value of non-human entities, such as ecosystems and biodiversity, in environmental decision-making. How do indigenous philosophies contribute to climate change? Discussions. Indigenous philosophies offer unique perspectives on the human-nature relationship, emphasizing traditional ecological knowledge and holistic approaches to environmental management and climate resilience. What is the precautionary principle in environmental philosophy? The precautionary principle suggests that when there is a risk of significant harm to humans or the environment, precautionary measures should be taken even if the science is not yet definitive, guiding climate decision making under uncertainty. How can philosophical approaches inform climate policy and governance? Philosophical approaches can inform climate policy and governance by providing ethical frameworks, such as distributive justice and procedural justice, to ensure equitable and effective climate decision-making. What is the significance of intergenerational ethics in climate change discussions? Intergenerational ethics highlights the moral obligations to future generations, emphasizing the need for climate action to ensure a livable and sustainable world for generations to come. How do philosophical perspectives on technology influence climate solutions? Philosophical perspectives on technology, such as technological optimism and skepticism, shape our understanding of the potential benefits and risks of climate technologies, like geoengineering, and inform their development and deployment. What is the role of climate justice movements in addressing climate change? Climate justice movements draw on philosophical foundations, such as distributive justice and human rights, to advocate for equitable climate policies and challenge unjust climate practices. How can philosophers contribute to climate activism and advocacy? Philosophers can contribute to climate activism and advocacy by applying ethical frameworks, analyzing climate policies, and providing critical thinking to inform climate decision-making and mobilization. Whether you're a student, policymaker, activist, or just curious, this video helps you connect climate change, global ethics, and the role of human values in shaping sustainable solutions. Perfect for those interested in climate philosophy, environmental ethics, and the intersection of morality and modern problems. Thanks for watching the video, and don't forget to subscribe for more video.